Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OurScoop.com. You already know.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Scoop, OurScoop.com's weekly podcast. Our Scoop is the authority on Temple athletics. Back to another episode. We're on to episode 29 of season 10. I'm your host, John DiCarlo. We've got a full house again. Kyle Gauss, Jason Yevis, Johnny Zwislak, Colin Schofield, and Ryan Mack.
I've thought more about who's who in Full House. I determine who I think you are.
Me?
Yes.
Who am I?
You're Comet the dog.
I'll take it. Why am I Comet the dog? Do I want to know?
Like, you're very palatable. Like, nobody's upset that Comet comes into the room and interrupts the scene. It's a compliment.
You're very palatable. Who are you? Are you Danny Tanner?
No, we went over this. I'm Uncle Jesse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Joey. I am all the uncles. And I'm also Bob Sag. Johnny is DJ.
Why do I feel like that's a slight?
It's not. She's like the fourth most important character.
Kyle.
Yeah.
I feel like I've done my time to be more.
I'll say uncles.
More up on the totem pole.
Uncles, Danny Tanner, the combined Michelle, so the twins, Mary Kate and Olsen combined character Michelle, and then I think DJ. Comments below DJ.
Who's going to be Lori Loughlin, who later gets embroiled in a USC admission scandal?
I don't know, but if whoever it is, tell her I say sup.
Oh my God. Anyway, welcome back to another episode of The Scoop. You'll hear part of my interview with new Temple football coach Casey Keeler on this week's podcast. As I said last week, to get the full interview, you have to be an OurScoop.com subscriber. So if you haven't already, go over to the site, click on that subscribe button at the top right of the screen, and we'll make sure that you get your money's worth with insight and interviews like this one, along with the latest recruiting information. Kyle's done a great job of staying on top of all of Casey Keeler's staff hires and bringing you the latest and most accurate recruiting information. Temple just got a verbal from Troy Cunningham, a defensive lineman from South Park High School outside of Pittsburgh. And Kyle talked to Troy before he announced his decision, so you can read all about that. Kyle's always posting the latest football scoop on our message board first for our subscribers. In terms of basketball, Adam Fisher's men's team is coming off an overtime win over ECU, a game Temple did not actually lead for the first time until overtime. They have an important two-game road trip coming up, starting with Thursday's game at USF, and then, of course, Sunday at number 17 Memphis, a team that they beat before. Both games are going to be nationally televised on ESPN2. And then we have to figure out what the heck is going on with this women's basketball team. You might be listening to this Wednesday morning as the Owls are getting ready to host Memphis in their annual school day game, but Temple blew two double-digit leads on the road at North Texas and UTSA with a chance to beat the two best teams in the American on the road. They instead lost both those games with a great chance to win, and now they are sitting in fifth place in the league standings instead of in second place, which is where they would be, I believe, a half game behind UTSA had they won those winnable games. So we'll talk about that. We'll get to all of your mailbag questions as well. I don't know if there's more Full House talk ahead, but, never say never.
Could be Fuller House.
Fuller House, yeah. The Scoop, as always, is brought to you by Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers. If you've been injured while on the road or the highway and the crash was someone else's fault, the insurance company is not going to be on your side. You need us, Temple Law grads, who will fight hard to get the compensation that you deserve. We only get paid if we win, so in Pennsylvania or New York, call us today at 215-261-7359. That's 215-261-7359. 7359, and you can find them on the web at greenspans-law.com. That's greenspans-law.com. You'll hear from Mike Greenspan later on as we bring in the mailbag. We've got several questions to get to there. When I think of Fuller House, I think of like a sequel with the Fuller character from Home Alone.
You know, Fuller House is a real TV show, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They did produce a sequel. Yeah, I didn't watch it either. I didn't watch that. I didn't watch Girl Meets World. I didn't watch any of those the second ones.
Do you remember who played Fuller in Home Alone?
No. Which character is Fuller?
The cousin that wet the bed all the time.
Oh, it's Macaulay Culkin's little brother.
Yeah. Yep.
Kieran Culkin.
Kieran Culkin. Yeah.
Girl Meets World is also a great show.
It is.
Sabrina Carpenter.
I would say Boy Meets World is definitely better, but Girl Meets World is also really good.
Can you guys confirm? Did you watch?
I can co-sign on that. It was kind of like the last show of the really good Disney shows
Yes,
of when we
yeah.
were kids.
That was like the send off because now it's
it felt like
not
that
good.
ended and then Jesse ended and that ended and really got bad.
Downhill from there. Far
Yeah.
downhill.
Are you two going to be able to get along for On Around the State?
That's up to him.
It's always someone else's fault.
Mm.
I'm perfectly fine just doing this segment on my own. I don't know.
Kyle, do you ever feel like Johnny's sitting on the couch and we're talking to him in therapy and we're just trying to get him to
Are you
open up?
saying that I need therapy?
No, we all everybody in this
Everybody needs some
everybody in this
therapy.
everybody needs therapy. Yes, I agree.
But
Thank you.
I mean,
Some
like,
therapy
based on
comes
my
in substance abuse. Some comes in actually talking to people. You need some type of outlet. To your point, John, we've seen a lot of character growth from Johnny in the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Step back so far today. We've taken.
What
a
did I
step.
do? What did I do?
You're not hearing criticism, internalizing it, and responding to it. You're just deflecting.
How am I? What did I deflect? I just said, "Are you saying I need therapy for my actions?" I didn't say I didn't need it. I just asked John. if
Right
that's
now,
what he
It's
said.
just-
number one,
it's
there's
true.
tone. There's tone.
Number one, watch your mouth.
Hold on. What? I don't understand what I said.
Throwing around a lot of big words because I don't understand them. I'm gonna take them as aggression.
Yes. What? What big word did I say?
Let's keep it going.
There we go.
On or around the state, Johnny, lead us off and just be nice to your buddy here, because you guys do love each other. You're good friends, but maybe our listeners wouldn't know that because I don't know. Go ahead. We'll see how this goes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of On or Around This Date. I am your host, Johnny Zawizlak. We have another great segment here for you guys today. We asked Kyle last time what we wanted to start with. John, I'm going to extend that courtesy to you. Would you like to start with birthdays or events?
If we start with birthdays, will you promise to be nice to everybody?
I'll be nice to everybody.
Okay, let's start with birthdays.
On February 5th of 1934, this American baseball player was born in Alabama. Played from 1954 to 1975. Played for the Milwaukee/Atlanta Braves.
Hank Aaron.
Okay.
Correct.
Hammer and Hank.
Moving on to the next one.
He never hit more than like 44 homers in a season. He just did
That
it for
I
like
don't know.
he just beat the crap out of the ball for like 20 some years, but he
Yeah.
never had like that monster year.
Sorry to interrupt you here, Johnny, but I'm just gonna pick off where you left off.
For somebody that
awful.
wasn't informed, for just an outsider listening in, this entire episode is just cyberbullying.
Can I just say something before he goes and
Yeah.
before we move on?
Go ahead.
I just want to say I have said nothing towards Jason, and the fact that he's going to insert himself and not even give me the courtesy of letting me finish mine and ruining the entire flow of this segment, I think is rude and should be called out by everyone here.
It's just
That's just me, my personal opinion. Not
It's
trying
just
to be
that
rude.
you play into it every week.
But I think that this is something that should be called out because
Fine, we've called it out. It's been called out.
thank you, I appreciate
I'll
it.
throw
No
a flag
problem.
on this one.
Thank you, Colin. I
Yeah, that's
appreciate
fair
it.
enough. I'll take a flag.
Delay a game on Jason, I guess.
Okay.
Anyway, sticking in the same realm of sports, this Portuguese soccer player or football, depending on what you reference it as, was born on February 5th, 1985.
See, and before anyone goes, I'm going to not say the answer, even though Jay usually tries to participate and give the answer because I actually know this because it was going to be mine.
I do not know a 40-year-old Portuguese soccer player.
He's widely
You definitely do.
Cristiano
You definitely
Ronaldo.
do know him.
it is Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah, I was gonna answer.
I have a
but-
Ronaldo story.
You do?
2018, I went to Iceland. Got there off the plane, terrible food. Get there, go through a glacier, go like snowmobiling. I put on the helmet. The guy goes, "You're gonna think I'm lying." Cristiano Ronaldo wore that helmet last week. I was like, "Really?" He was like, he was here, he did the tour, he wore that helmet. So I hope they cleaned it in between. We don't know. Really no way of knowing.
Sticking with soccer, on February 5th, 1992, this Brazilian soccer player was born. He's one of the most prolific scorers of his generation and played on FC Barcelona.
Neymar.
Correct.
Here we
You
go.
have another birthday, Jay, or can I move on to events?
We've hit our soccer quota for the episode.
I actually do have another one. This one's staying in sports still. Going back to the year 1942, former football player was born February 5th, 1952, and was one of the early, say, dominant quarterbacks in the NFL.
52,
That's 42.
42. Bart Starr?
Played the 60s. Terry Bradshaw.
No, he led the Dallas Cowboys in the 19.
Oh, Roger Staubach.
That is correct.
Moving on to events. Ryan, you should enjoy this one. This is a two-parter. On February 5th, 2017, the first ever overtime in the Super Bowl occurred. What were the two teams?
Falcons and the Patriots.
Correct. Do you know the deficit that they overcame? Do you know the exact number of points?
It was 25 points. They're down 28 to
28
3.
to 3. Yeah.
Correct.
James White scored the game-winning touchdown.
23
Okay.
late in the third too, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I believe it was like
20 to 9 at the end of the third.
at the end. Yeah, at the end of the
Yeah.
third. Yes. Moving on to the next one. On February 5th, 1917, this country adopted its current constitution. It's a Western country.
Mexico.
Correct.
Hey, look at me.
Good job, Kyle. I thought I was going to have to continue to go there. I didn't think
I would have guessed them and then like Costa Rica and then given up on the entire segment.
Moving on for my final event before Jason, I'm sure will have something to add.
I detect
on-
going again.
That's not. I was acknowledging that he was gonna.
It's just fun.
Yep,
It's
yep.
just fun.
I'm gonna keep going. On February 5th, 1971, this space exploration was completed. It was consisted of Alan B. Shepard Jr., Edgar D. Mitchell, Stuart A. Russa.
Apollo 15.
13?
Nope and no.
14.
Correct.
Yeah.
You guys both guessed the ones right around it. I didn't want to say it was the third exploration to the moon because then you just take 11 plus 3 and you get 14. But all right, that was on around this day from my side. Jay, what do you have?
Oh, I appreciate that transition, Johnny. It's all love, you know. Gonna keep pushing. Going to the boxing area of things. On this day, or February 5th, 1943, this boxer nicknamed the Bronze Bull handed Sugar Ray Robinson his first defeat.
The Bronx Bull. I've heard that nickname a million times. Do you know, or are you just tapping your foot?
I don't know.
Nobody can hear you.
Robert De Niro.
I thought I know, but I don't know.
The Bronx Bull. The Bronx Bull.
No idea.
Who is it?
Jake LaMotta.
Anything else?
That is it for me, Johnny.
And that was on around this day.
A lot of venom at the beginning, and then
Hey.
it calmed down.
I'm sorry. So then I was sort of right? I said Robert De Niro. That's Jake LaMotta.
Oh, I
Raging
didn't hear you say that. We just watched The Irishman again a couple nights ago. You did not like The Irishman?
It sucked.
Oh, wow. Really?
Irishman. Here's one of my many gripes with The Irishman. Number one, obviously, being when they character age De Niro to make him look like he's young or whatever when he beats up that guy outside the shop. Two, when they map out how he's going to go meet up with Jimmy Hoffa in Detroit, he talks about the route. He mentions the Blue Route. Blue Route didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
The Blue Route was a bike path. And yet they're out there claiming, oh, I'm going to take the Blue Route to this. I'm going to go. No.
I feel like-
Unwatchable. My immersion, gone.
I feel like you've complained. You've voiced that Blue Route complaint before.
And guess what? They haven't gone back and retconned it and fixed it. So the complaint remains.
They're probably okay with that. I mean, like, I'd hate to have you watch Invincible.
Invincible, I don't think presents itself as like this historical timepiece. The Irishman had so much like snuff around it where it's like, oh, look at this. Look at they released a full-fledged Scorsese movie on Netflix. It's the wave of the future. And like I just can't take it seriously. Couldn't do it.
Which do you remember? Well, maybe you've just blocked this all out. Which historical North Philadelphia figure's character made an appearance in The Irishman a little bit later on in the movie? Do you remember?
Cecil B. More.
Yes. There you
Look at
go.
me.
Yep. Yeah.
Kyle 17. Trivia 2.
I don't think I even ventured an actual guest or on or around this date. We could go do another round of it, see if you guys tear each other's heads off, but we probably won't do that. So, guys, had the chance to sit down earlier today with Casey Keeler, Temple's new football coach. Again, if you are an owlscoop.com subscriber, you're going to be able to access parts 2 and 3 of the interview. So again, great time to subscribe. The first part of the interview you're going to hear here is about just from the time that we last talked to him at his press conference. I asked him, what did you do after that? Where did life take you with all these things to do? Talked about his family, his wife Janice, and how they kind of walked through what they were going to do next in terms of he gets this offer from Temple. Is he going to take it? He talked to me a little bit about being on a Zoom call with about 80 or 100 alumni and just his plan for the program, and asked him about like the secret of his success, how he's been able to be successful places like Rowan, like Delaware, like Sam Houston State, doing it at different levels, and asked him a little bit about the beginnings of his staff, how he put that staff together. But in parts 2 and 3, that's where you're going to start hearing about his coordinators. The offensive coordinator, Tyler Walker, defense coordinator, Brian Smith. But you'll hear him talk a little bit here about Henry Baker, Andrew Pierce, his running backs coach. So a lot of good stuff here. Again, parts 2 and part 3 you won't want to miss. We're going to try to get those out later on this week and certainly by the weekend. But really kind of just takes you inside his thought process, what has made him successful, and a lot of cool stories to share as well. A lot of insight about how he put together the staff and why. You'll hear him say here, I loved my staff at Sam Houston State. Wish I could have brought them all with me, but it didn't make sense for me to bring everyone with me. He talked about his general manager, Clayton Barnes, who was really, I think, his first hire. He was at Casey's introductory press conference. So hope you guys will be able to enjoy a lot of this. And then, of course, look forward to parts 2 and 3 later on in the week. So we'll play this for you, and we'll have more for you, of course, on the show on the other side. Casey, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. So much to get into. One of the first things I wanted to ask you was that first day, and I know there's stuff that happens before you're introduced to us in the media, but you do the press conference, you do the breakout. It's so hectic. Do you remember, like, as soon as you were done talking to us as reporters, what did you have to do next? Because you probably have a to-do list that's a million items long. Do you remember what you did that day right after you talked to us?
Well, yeah. Part of it was getting set up to talk to the players. Wanted to, start getting those one-on-one meetings set up. Hadn't put together a staff yet. Very conscious of the fact that I want to make a regional staff, so it wasn't like I could just bring all the guys from Sam Houston with me. And I always talk about, putting together a staff is like a jigsaw puzzle. Mm-hmm. And every jigsaw puzzle, every institution's a little bit different. So there was a certain staff I wanted to put together here at Temple. So, it was like 3 hours of sleep every day for about 2 weeks. And it was awesome. My wife was in Texas getting the house all squared away. Fortunately, we sold it in a day. And so now she was packing everything. And I remember her saying to me, she said, every time I talk to you, you sound even more excited. And you even sound like happier that you made this decision. Because, it was a hard decision in some ways, lifetime contract in terms of, like, they basically said, how long do you want to stay at Sam Houston? And we just come off a bowl win, and there's a lot of guys coming back, but when I talked to Arthur, and I got on with the president, John Fry, I saw the vision that they had, and the vision was that great football at Temple is going to be great for this whole institution. It's going to help the whole brand, and so I took a little leap of faith because they haven't had a lot of success recently, but I've seen them have great success. Yeah, I mean not mediocre. I mean like great success. And they still, at this point, in the last decade, they still have the most NFL players of any G5 school, and actually more than 30% of the Power 4 schools. Mm-hmm. So I know it's here, and I just felt like I could get it back.
You mentioned your wife, Janice, and you were nice enough to talk about her when you did the interview with WHIP, the student radio station here. And I think sometimes fans forget that it's a you decision, but it's also a family decision too. And you guys have moved all over, and you've had success everywhere you've gone. If you're willing to share, like, what is that like when you talk to your wife and say, hey, we could ride things out here, that I'm retired, we could be totally happy, but there's another challenge. It's back at home. But what is that like when you're having those conversations with your wife? Because in this profession, it's not just like, oh, by the way, here's where we're going. Right. Like, you talk it over with your family, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's definitely a family decision. And so we're right in the middle between our two children. So we have a son out in the West Coast in Los Angeles. He's a book-to-film agent. And our daughter and 3 grandchildren are on the East Coast, and she's an executive for a bank. And so it was convenient in that my wife would hop on a plane once a month going either east or going west. But those FaceTimes with the grandchildren, it's not the same as being with the grandchildren. And so when the Temple opportunity happened, she said, you know, like, you don't have to do this. Like, this decision's all about what you think is the best for you and for us. And so I appreciate not having that pressure. And then when I told her, it was actually her birthday. We had just beaten Liberty on Friday night. Saturday, we had a quick meeting with the team. And then Saturday late afternoon, I took her out, you know, for shopping, and we were going to have dinner. And then that's when we had come to an agreement. And she couldn't stop crying. You know, she just was overwhelmed that she gets a chance to come back to her roots. And, you know, we grew up in the city. You know, we fell in love in this city. And, you know, Chinatown and you know, Reading Terminal Market.
How'd you guys meet?
So it was one of those where I was getting ready to try to out with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
And her best friend met me and said, I have a girl for you. And I'm like, I'm good. Like, I don't need any help. And we met, and, you know, now it's coming up on 40 years of marriage in July. So, yeah, she, you know, she didn't express to me before I made that final decision that, like, that was something that she wanted to do, like, this is a must. But I could tell, like, when I made that final decision, she was so excited to get back to so many close friends here, family's back here, her father's back here, her sister's back here. And, you know, I have a mom and my brother's back here. And then also to be with the grandchildren, her daughter and the grandchildren. So it was a big deal.
I think you'd mentioned to the WHIP guys, too, that you'd hopped on a Zoom with like 80 or 100 alums. If you're willing to share, like, who were some of the players and Temple people on that Zoom call, and what was the sentiment they were expressing to you? Yeah,
so it was pretty much a, like, this is my vision. And I said, listen, you guys built this place. I'm going to lock it up at night. But you built this place. You guys are always welcome. Here are my thoughts. My thoughts are when you know, I look at the greatness that Temple has had, it's been about the great players they've gotten from the footprint. New York, New Jersey, PA, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, Ohio now I'm going to go into. And I said, we're going to recruit the footprint really hard. Will we get players from Georgia? Absolutely. Will we get players from Florida? Absolutely. From Charlotte? Absolutely. But we're going to really get back into, you know, dominating this footprint. If you think about it, the closest G5 schools, you got Massachusetts to our north, and you got James Madison to our south. Delaware's just becoming a G5 school, but I was in that conference. I know the difference in resources that we're going to have here at Temple versus the resources they're going to have there, you know, based on the conference that they're in. So I just talked to him about, you know, that, and my lens of Temple football was, you know, a team that was runner-up in the nation at Delaware, got just beaten up by Temple my sophomore year, and then the team that won the national championship, 13-1, its only loss was the Temple. And so I said, that's my lens. I can remember. And then what happened was, I haven't been on campus for, you know, 40 years. And I get on campus, and it just blows me away with how this place has changed. And now you understand why it's a top 50 school in the nation. And you realize that, yeah, we have a medical school and a law school and an engineering school and a dental school and one of the best business schools in America. And then you have a sports broadcasting major that's just so unique that a lot of people are interested in, and just a communication school in general. So you realize that this is a gold mine. And that's how I see this. I see this as a place where there's no reason we can't become a Tulane or a Memphis. That's my vision of where Temple football can go.
You've had success everywhere you've gone. You did it at Rowan. I was a sports writer in South Jersey, way down in Cumberland County at the Daily Journal in Vineland when you were winning at Rowan and recruiting that area really well. And you've won at Delaware, and what you did at Sam Houston State, not just to win there, not just to win a title, but then to get them to the FBS level and then win a few different places, different variables, but it's worked. Yeah. So I know it's a simple question, but what is the secret to your success? Because whatever you've done, sure, you have up years and down years. You're going to have that in coaching, but it has worked at all sorts of different levels where nobody just handed you a championship roster or championship like resources all the time.
Yeah, I think I'm the ultimate problem solver. And I think when I walk into a job, I look at it and say, okay, like, what can make this great? Like at Rowan, you realize you had to recruit those kids in North Jersey and get them down to South Jersey. and show them, cost-wise, this is going to be a lot cheaper living off campus than what's going to cost you to live in North Jersey.
Yeah,
so
absolutely,
it's just, explaining the story. That this is our strength. I get to Texas, I realize very quickly, I'm going to recruit Texas, and Texas. And Roy hit that 3-hour radius around Sam Houston. At Delaware is the same thing, kind of figuring out, okay, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses? Same thing here at Temple. I mean, I realize our strength is our location. 5-hour radius, football is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get better football than Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Virginia, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Delaware. I mean, it's incredible. And so I think I walk in and say, okay, what are the variables and how are we going to attack this? It's the same thing like when I hire a staff. I love those guys at Sam Houston, and I wish I could have brought every single one of them with me.
Yeah.
That was not the right decision for this job, and that's the hard part about this in terms of like overseeing the whole thing. There's a business side that I think I do a good job separating the family and the business, and I call it's a family business.
Yeah.
And so I'm willing to make those hard decisions, and so I realized we did an incredible job at Sam Houston. However, this is a different environment here, and the guys I need to hire. I'll just give you one example, like Henry Baker.
Yeah.
Henry Baker was my corners coach at Delaware, and I just got done spending 3 days up in North Jersey with him. He should run for governor. I mean, like everyone just like, hey, Henry. I mean, he grew up in Patterson.
Yeah.
He knows everybody up there. They trust him. There's a connection. They actually trust me because of the success I've had in the region, but having Henry there, who's a hands-on guy. Then I go down to Maryland, and, Henry played at Maryland and coached at Maryland. And there's so many coaches down there that either coached him or played with him. And so that's just one example of like the hiring Henry Baker, great corners coach, coached in the NFL. But on top of that, not only the fact that he's a great person, but regionality. He can give us so much in recruiting. And that's kind of how I looked at every hire. I want a great coach, I want a great person, because I want kids who can, I want people who can relate to our players, but also what can they give me in the recruiting? And I think I've put together a really outstanding staff.
Yeah, that led me right into my next question. Do you almost kind of have, coaches always say, and in life really, you have to keep you have to keep your feet where they are, otherwise you lose track and you're not going to do what you did at Sam Houston State. But do you almost kind of have like a depth chart in your mind and saying, if I did have to pivot tomorrow and take another job, and if it were in the Northeast, like these are my guys, because you have to do it so quickly. I mean, like you just talk about Henry, really regionally connected, helped you. I mean, I know Jet White has to come in here and play well, but Jet followed him around and came here in part because of him. But do you almost kind of have a depth chart that's ready and saying, okay, if I were to go to Temple, these are the type of guys that make sense for me. Like, and Andrew Pierce makes sense for you, and I want to ask you about him too. But do you have to be ready to like almost kind of have that in your mind and saying like, these are the guys I have in mind for this type of job as opposed to like this type of job?
You might be surprised, but no. And this is why. Because I really do a good job of not thinking of that next job. Because, I embrace the job I'm in. I think that's why I probably have had so few jobs. Because I don't really worry about that next job. Yeah. I fall in love with the kids. I fall in love with the community. I fall in love with everything about doing the job here now at Temple. And so I don't spend a lot of time, and really, I wasn't really looking at Sam Houston until my athletic director came to me. And we had just gotten bowl eligible, and I think just won our 7th game. And he goes, I just don't know if we ever can give you what you deserve in terms of what you want to do with the staff and your own personal, salary and accolades and those kind of things. And, Rice is going to open up, and I'm going to Rice alum. He's a Rice alum. And I'm going to recommend you for Rice. And so I just took a step back there and I said, okay, what he's telling me is I've taken this place as far as I can take it. So maybe I do need to open my eyes. But I get so tunnel visioned. Like, I'm just like, this is my job and I'm doing it and I'm not worrying about what else is going on around me. Like, people will say, hey, did you see this job opened up? I didn't see that job opened up. I haven't been paying attention. I'm not, on Football Scoop looking for what's next. Because I think if you're looking for your next job, you're not doing your job. And but as soon as it became a possibility, those are the kind of things I started thinking about. And it's interesting. So, to talk about hiring coaches. So Brian Ginn was one of the first people I called. And he's the one who got me to hire Henry Baker. Because he said, when you left, Henry stayed with Brian. And when I was there, I had Henry for a year, and I also had Nick Rapone. Nick was here at Temple as a coordinator. He was with me at Delaware. He's now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And he goes, you saw a young Henry Baker with a superstar Nick Rapone. But when Nick left, boy, did Henry step up. And he is a phenomenal coach. So hearing that from Brian led me to Henry. And I was probably going to hire Henry anyway, but that's that confirmation. And then talking to Henry, I'm thinking about AP, Andrew Pierce. Andrew played for me. He's a kid. Then you realize he's a full-grown-ass man.
Yeah.
And you realize, talking to Henry, like he was part of AP's professional growth. AP would use him as a resource and like, how do I do this? And how do I get better at that? And so that led me to like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. I love AP as a person. I love him as a player. Don't know him as a coach, but I have the verification from Henry now that this is a guy I got to hire. Yeah. And again, when we went on the road, it was like AP was the mayor of, all of South Jersey. I mean, everyone, knew him and he had relation with everybody in the communities. And so, yeah, I mean, but that's kind of how it works sometimes. It's like you talk to people you trust and you say, okay, you've worked with him and what did you see? And, that's kind of how the Brian Gidd led to Henry Baker, led to Andrew Pierce.
I wanted to ask you about Andrew. I have a soft spot for that area because, again, I covered that area after graduating from Temple. And that area of South Jersey does not always get, Cumberland Regional High School is not seen. It hasn't been like a football powerhouse. It's more like people look at like Gloucester County, Camden County, before like Isaiah Pacheco was coming out of there. Like Millville was good. All the schools you probably recruited when you were at Rowan. But Cumberland, when he came out of there, it was after I had left. But I remember hearing about him and saying, this guy is like a great athlete and he's an incredible person. And I remember hearing people that would just talk to me randomly and say, he's going to be a coach someday. I've never met him, but I remember hearing about him. It's just kind of cool to see it come full circle.
Yeah, and so he's a guy that, because where the high school is located, some people don't go down that, a couple
down
miles.
Route 77 out in the middle of nowhere.
They don't make that turn to go down there.
Yeah.
And so we got him as a walk-on.
Oh, okay.
And what's crazy is he was the National Freshman of the Year, leads us to a national championship game, and he's a walk-on. I mean, he wasn't even on scholarship yet. And so obviously kind of forced me to put him on scholarship. Yeah. We always joke about that. I say, you kind of forced me to put you on scholarship. Yeah. But again, here's a guy who was like, Coach, you give me an opportunity, I'm taking advantage of it. And just to watch his work ethic and just every day how he approached the job and how a whole bunch of older players, seniors and juniors, just really turned to respect this walk-on freshman running back because of how he approached his craft every single day. And that's what Henry talked to me about. He goes, Coach, how he played is how he coaches. And I just watched this out there on MAC drills today. Wow. You talk about a guy who takes charge. You talk about a guy who, lets those players know exactly what the expectation level is. I was really impressed. So it was neat today. Today was our first day of MAC drills, and I got a chance to really see the coaches coach and be around the players. You got to remember, it's kind of a strange time when you take over a program. You get here, you pretty much say, hi, this is who I am. Oh, by the way, Merry Christmas. Yeah. And then when they come back, you're on the road recruiting. Yeah. I thought it was really important I got out. I wanted everybody to know that Temple is back in the recruiting of the East Coast again. And that's going to be our footprint. That's going to be our focus. And we want you coming to our camps. We want you coming to our junior days. We want you coming to spring practice. And we're going to be fully engaged with you. And so I thought it was really important I did that. But also, part of that, what I do every winter is I turn the program over to the strength coach and the strength staff. And it's important sometimes just to kind of get away from a little bit. And so it all worked out, where this was the first day I was fully engaged with them. They heard my voice in terms of what the expectations were. But that was a great thing about bringing my strength coach along with me, was I knew he could step in and run it exactly how I wanted it run. And so, yeah, that's kind of how the whole thing works.
One of your first hires was Clayton Barnes, your general manager, and that's a super important role now, one that we might not have been talking about 5 or 10 years ago. He came to you first as an intern, right?
Yeah, so I love this story. and he has heard me tell it probably 50 times, where he's at Texas A&M in the engineering school, and he's studying for that engineering exam, and he keeps on taking breaks like every half hour or so to do his top 100 players of Texas football, his own personal top 100 players of Texas football. And he goes to himself, what am I doing? I don't want to be an engineer. I want to do this. Goes to sports management. Johnny Manziel is at A&M at the time, so you have to be a legacy to be part of the program. I mean, can't be an equipment manager or anything. And so, we're 45 minutes away. He interned with us, loved them, went to Texas State, went to Georgia Southern. I got him back, and I just saw the growth that he had. And I saw the suggestions that he made. And I quickly figured out, this is what a general manager, he understands football at a very high level. Can watch video and can tell you about a prospect. Also it's like an old soul in terms of how to handle situations. So he's a perfect confidant. And, that's kind of how I operate. When I see guys who have great ability, I latch on to them. And Clayton was one of those guys where I said, follow me because I'm going to take you some places. Made him my general manager, and we are just so organized in terms of the staff and the support staff coming in. That's what this has become because of the portal, because of NIL, because of all those extra factors. Now you need a general manager to sort of oversee everything. And, I think I did a great job hiring one.
All right. Hopefully you guys enjoyed part one of our conversation. I want to thank Casey Keeler. Sat down with him for probably more than an hour. So later on this week, you'll get access, if you're an Owl Scoop subscriber, to parts 2 and part 3. Again, some great stuff on the coordinators, Tyler Walker and Brian Smith, how they ended up at Temple, along with some players on the roster, some insight into the roster. Casey didn't get too far into that, but you'll hear about his philosophy on how he's going to work things with the single digits, even some stuff going back to the early days of his life, how he fell in love with the game of football, his brief time with the Eagles, and just having a brief cup of coffee in the NFL, being around people like Mike Quick and Wes Hopkins. So some really, really cool stuff there that you guys won't want to miss. So let's talk about this Temple men's basketball team. They beat ECU 98-94 in overtime over the weekend on Saturday. No Shane Dezzoni, no Mo Kita. They did get Elijah Gray back, a game that they actually did not lead until it got to overtime. So certainly not a perfect game by any means. In a perfect world, you shouldn't need overtime to beat ECU, but kind of going around the horn here, if you guys want to chime in, what were your impressions of the game Saturday? Again, it keeps them moving, keeps them around the top 4 in the standings. Still a lot of work to do for this team, but what stood out from Saturday's game for you?
For me, I think, obviously, like you mentioned, it wasn't a great showing, not leading till overtime. Like, that cannot happen against an ECU team that you're 100% better than. The defense is probably the biggest glaring
Kyle's
issue.
shrugging a little bit.
He's what?
Kyle's shrugging a little bit.
Like, are they 100% better?
I wouldn't say 100% better than. Yeah, they could.
Yeah, maybe not 100%.
It was the first time Matt Fisher was beating ECU. He was 0-3
Yeah.
going into the game.
Yeah.
I'm saying I just think the both times Temple has played them, it's been Temple's probably worst games that they've had this season, up to where they should be. They're not playing to their full potential against both of them, which is why I say that.
Gotcha.
Not because not fully talent wise. I'm saying playing up to their full potential and playing at like they did against Memphis, they have earlier parts of the season. Both the times you played ECU, it's clearly not the same Temple team, which is why I say that.
Gotcha.
Not just
There we go.
overall talent wise, but
Got it.
the defense I think was the biggest thing for me in the just rotation wise, off ball defense, sticking with the players. I think Shane Dezzoni was a big miss for Temple. He clearly showed in the rebounds, getting the rebound the way they did. I think the bright side that comes out of this and the Charlotte game is just finding ways to win, even when you probably shouldn't win the game. That's stuff that you can grow from and you can build on. And that's stuff that old Temple teams the last 3 years, they lose that game 100 times out of 100. They lose the Charlotte game 100 times out of 100 in those scenarios where you get down early like that, they falter.
Yeah.
This team has found ways to fight back and win, and then obviously you can't say enough about Jamal Mashburn's offensive output these last couple of games as well.
Let me ask you guys this question. CJ Walker gets 33 points on them. Now, Adam Fisher thinks that ECU has 3 all-league players in CJ Walker and RJ Felton, and of course Temple's former guard Jordan Riley. Jordan Riley had 13 points on a couple of big dunks. RJ Felton, I think, had 13 of his 19. He had an insane amount of his 19 points in overtime. Didn't get going until late. He's been one of their better players and one of the better guards in the league. And he said that CJ Walker was a player that they tried to recruit to Miami when he was on Jim Larrañaga's staff. So he's a good player, but I mean they had no answers for him. How much of that is CJ Walker being a good basketball player, and how much of that is just I mean, I know there were at least a few possessions where I think they just fell asleep on backdoor cuts and stuff like that. How much of that is CJ Walker? How much of that is Temple not doing a good job of allowing him to get 33 points?
It's definitely a combination of both. I would say it leaned more towards just defensive breakdowns because he was simply just like there was times where even where he was contested heavily, he's getting to the rim and getting good shots at the end of the day. And I think that's what we've seen from them is that at times they struggled down low, and you have an Elijah who's coming back from injury. And not going to speculate about his health entirely, but it seemed like Walker was more like active and attacking Elijah Gray, which just allowed him to be more dominant down low.
I think I agree with you. I mean, when I like CJ Walker, I think is a very good basketball player. There's definitely some defensive lapses there, but I mean, I think CJ Walker also got buckets that were just so impressive. Like he got to his spots so easily and was just finishing over and over and over. And like it didn't feel like he missed easy shots. Like it felt like he was just making everything that he put up at the basket. And so there's definitely, like Jay said, like defensive lapses, I think. And I was thoroughly impressed with just how well he managed to, insert his game into kind of the flow of the basketball game.
So we can look ahead. The coaches and the players cannot. Obviously, they play USF on Thursday. USF is 11-11 overall, 4-5 in the league. So again, Temple has to get through USF first. Then you've got Memphis looming on Sunday. Memphis still nationally ranked. They're 17th in the current AP poll. Let's look ahead to that Memphis game. Obviously, when they upset them last month, you can feel pretty good about how the team has played. Again, they're 10-0 at home. So they have that's impressive. They have yet to lose at home. 2 road games this week. I'm asking a question that is probably going to be more accurately answered after if we were to scoop again on like Friday, which we're not, because we could see stuff. They could go down to Tampa and lose by 20 there at USF. But let's have some fun with this. Let's say they do what they're supposed to do at USF and they win. Can this team upset Memphis a second time, or have you seen some concerning signs or inconsistent signs or maybe some good stuff that would lead you to believe, like, yeah, they can go on the road and beat them again?
Honestly, I do think they can. Like I think they have the talent. This team has the talent to do it. I don't think they will. I think can and will are two vastly different things. Yes, you saw them beat them at home, and that was great. Also, see them play a Charlotte team that was coming off just breaking a 6-game losing streak at home, taking them double overtime. You've seen them like kind of lose a big lead against Rice on the road. You saw them lose a big lead against ECU on the road. You all see them play against UTSA and against a team that they probably again should be on the road and then lose. Yes, I think this team has the talent to do it. They are realistically a top 4 team in the American Athletic Conference. I want to say that confidently. I just don't see them being able to go on the road to Memphis, all the struggles they've had coming off of, we don't know what's going to happen against South Florida, but that's still a tough game as well. But going off 2 overtime games against teams that you probably one of them you most definitely should have beaten in regulation, and another one that you probably should not have gone to overtime with at all. So it's just really hard to have that confidence.
And again, there's a mailbag question, and we'll jump over to women's hoops in a second because we do have a mailbag question that addresses a lot of this. But Kyle, what do you think? And again, I know we are fully skipping over the USF game, but how are you feeling about these next 2 games coming up, and could they upset Memphis again?
First of all, firmly overlooking South Florida because we're talking about a team that just gave up 54 points in the paint going up against a team that has Jameel Reynolds,
absolutely,
former foe. So I'm not necessarily chalking that up as a 100% win, but you never know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not saying they're definitely going to go down there and win by any means.
I saw a lot of to the ECU game, it's encouraging that this team's that good offensively. Like, this is the best Temple offensive team that I've seen in a long time. I mean, it's the highest scoring Temple team of all time right now per game. Like, a lot of that has to do with if the season ended right now, Jamal Mashburn's probably like a 3rd-team All-American. Like, a lot of it has to do with that. It is concerning to me how bad defensively they are at times. And in that first half against ECU, it was such like a layup line defense at times when like Walker had, I think, 6.6 field goals made in the paint in the first half. Like they managed to shore things up enough to keep it close. I feel like that's the type of game where if their defensive performance in the first half of ECU shows itself at FedEx Forum or whatever it's called in Memphis, they're not coming back into that game.
No.
Like Memphis, I think you're not sneaking up on anybody after you beat them a month earlier. Memphis is the type of team that's going to want revenge. Penny Hardaway is the type of coach that is going to want revenge, to the point that I really have to squint and kind of bend over backwards to see any way that Temple like keeps this game within reaching distance. I think you kind of just view this as like a bloodletting game where you're like, okay, you got Memphis out of the way. You don't necessarily have to play Memphis again unless you run into them in the bracket. Just kind of take your lumps and keep going. I would be hard pressed to see this game going positively for Temple.
Yeah. Let's jump over to women's hoops. Now, again, you guys might be listening to this by the time Diane Richardson's team is playing on Wednesday morning against Memphis, correct? For the school day game.
Yes.
So now Jay and Johnny, you got, and I don't know if Ryan and Colin, you guys are going to be over there as well. You're going to get a chance to talk to Diane Richardson after the Memphis game. We'll see what happens there. But of course, we're going to have questions about what happened on the road last week. So yeah, we are recording this before they get to playing Memphis. What is happening in late game situations? Is it lack of execution? Is it coaching? Because again, the women, just like the men, are in the same position where they are not an at-large bid team. They're going to have to win the conference tournament to get into the NCAA tournament. The women, but well, both teams were within range to do that. The women look more likely than the men. Of course, the men go on that run, but it's anybody's guess as to what kind of team the women are going to be in the conference tournament. They can clearly jump out to not just leads, but double-digit leads against North Texas on the road, and then at UTSA on the road, and then they folded against both teams. We can talk about the stats. We know what the numbers are, but why did they fold in these two games? What went wrong? Again, we'll have more insight in next week's pod from Diane Richardson, but just based off of what you guys have seen, I mean, again, they could make a run in the tournament. All is forgiven, but really two missed opportunities last week.
Yeah, you mentioned the execution. I think that's the biggest issue, and I think especially on the offensive end, we know the capabilities of them as a defensive team and being able to use that in transition. But when you're not forcing turnovers and you're not getting out in transition and scoring effectively, I think that's where they struggle the most. And you can see that in their shooting numbers. Like the first half of the game against North Texas, they're shooting 48 and 70% in both the first and second quarter. But third and fourth quarter, they're shooting 35 and then 25%. And it's just, I think at times we've seen it where it's, whether it's a Tierra East or Tariana Gary, one of them seems to be struggling during that stretch. And rather than kind of play around that and use the equal opportunity offense, it instead turns into a, I'm going to shoot my way out of this type of thing. And we've seen that with Tierra East. And she had a better game against UTSA. But I do think, like, and looking at that UTSA game, is the opposite of that, where it's Tierra East and Tariana Gary, and then the rest of the team is struggling. So I think if the equal opportunity offense is going to work, it has to be 100% full effort and consistency across the entire team. And I think when it's not working, like we've seen the past couple of games, especially in the later half of games, you see results like this.
I think the biggest thing for me was how shocking it was. Like, for how much we talk about how great this defense is, like, you get a double-digit lead, and it feels like if for as good of a defensive team they are, it feels
Then
like
they
they
should
should
be
be
able to
like
hold
they
on
should
to
be
it.
able to hold on to it.
Yeah.
That's just like the first instinct or thought that comes to your head, especially like against UTSA, where they had that in the third quarter. Like, they had it like halfway through the third quarter, they still had that double-digit lead, and it felt like, okay, like they're gonna be able to pull this off and take down the top team. And again, we haven't been able to talk with Diane Richardson. We haven't been able to talk with the team since they went out to the road. Part of me wants to think like maybe the fact of like, this is like the UTSA offense and how high powered it is, the North Texas offense, how high powered it is. Maybe that thought's in the back of the head are like, oh, like, when are they going to turn it on? When are they going to turn it on? And then like you kind of blink and that double-digit lead is gone. Like, you get so caught up in the moment of like getting ready for the moment that you let it get it past, and it kind of jumps on you. I think Jay made a great point with how the struggles Tierra East and Tierra Gary normally come in that one quarter that the entire team struggles, and they can't find a way to, like, okay, Tierra East has missed her last 4 or 5 shots. Like, let's pivot here. Let's go to Keeler Turner. Let's go to Jaleesa. Let's go to someone else to kind of jolt this offense. It feels like they have struggled with that in one quarter. All the other 3 quarters, they're fine. They're able to pivot. They're able to find ways, but it's always one quarter that just kind of kills them. It was the second quarter against North Texas. It was the third/beginning of the fourth quarter against UTSA. Like, it just feels like it's always something with them.
This is going to sound like the dumbest, most elementary comment, but in the men's game, you have 2 20-minute halves, and yes, you have timeouts, you have TV timeouts and stuff like that. In the women's game, it is segmented into 4 quarters. Do you think there is anything with this team? I don't know if they've talked about this, like psychologically, where like, let's say they play a great first quarter, game stops. There's a signature moment where the game stops, goes in the second quarter. Is there something where they just literally just like the stoppage in the game causes them to stop, get complacent, overthink things, where it's just segmented into a quarter, and then they're thinking like there's always one quarter. We're not expecting them to be South Carolina. They are not that high level of a team. A lot of teams give up runs. They go on runs, but is there something about the way the game is segmented to the point where it is like they kind of might think, oh, well, is there a bad quarter looming here because of the little stoppages and the segmentation of the game?
I think like I don't know, because I mean most of like college basketball has always been like that. So
Yeah.
like I would assume they're used to like the quarter stuff. But I
Wasn't always like that.
That's fair. That's
Not
fair.
at
It
all.
wasn't always like that.
It's actually kind of recent, right? Wasn't
Yeah.
it? I think it was in the last like 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
saying like for them playing like
It's been
they-
long enough where they should get used
yes,
to
that's
it.
what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
long enough where it should be like used to them for at this point. I think you made a good point with the thought of the back of their heads. There's always one quarter. I think there's a lot to the mental aspect to it, and then that leads to the execution part of it.
Mhm.
That Diane Richardson's talked about it, where like how they always have one quarter, and she tells them to like just keep going, use the momentum from the last one, and carry it into the next one. Like don't think like that. But I mean, it's hard. I mean, the way that like, this dates back to last season, so it's like it's hard for players like Tarana Gary, Tiara East, Jaleesa Molina to not have that thought. And there are times where they don't. Like they've had games this season where it doesn't happen, but against top tier talent like a UTSA, like a North Texas, it's kind of hard to think like that thought isn't there at all.
Yeah, and kind of following up off that, I think that it also plays a part that this team is still extremely young. When you look at it, excluding like Tierra East, like Terry and Gary, who have been here for a couple of years, the remainder of the roster is mostly sophomores and freshmen, besides like Anis Rivera and Amaya Oliver. So it's 4 players who are kind of like your leaders in your team, but the remainder of your core is like still sophomores and still developing habits and different, and adjusting to the college space of the game, which some of them, it's going to take longer than others. So I think that also kind of plays a role. And when following up of Johnny's point of just how things were last year, and I think there's things that like kind of get ingrained in your game and in your culture. And I think this is one of the things that right now it's just unfortunately like become a part of like their team right now, which I think this is definitely something that can be snapped out of it, but it just has to take time and I think patience. And
Quick, just to take some doom and gloom out of this, they've lost 4 games to the 4 best teams in the conference, 3 of which were on the road.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
not going to play UTSA again or UNT again until the tournament. They get South Florida at home. I'm sorry, not South Florida. They have to play at Tulane. That's going to be a problem. But like the schedule gets a lot softer going down the stretch.
So stay tuned to owlscoop.com for our coverage of the Memphis game and, of course, the rest of the season. We'll talk more women's hoops next week. Let's hop over to the mailbag. We have a couple questions from friends, some of your colleagues at the Temple News that we'll have fun with. As we do every week, we hear from our friend Mike Greenspan of Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers. Again, he's there if you need him, but he wants to keep you safe on the road. Here's his weekly tip for staying safe on the road as a driver.
Road salt. It gets everywhere. It's coarse and it's irritating, but most importantly, it gets on your headlights and taillights. So think about it. When you're driving at night in the winter, you need all the light that you can get. If your headlights and taillights haven't been cleaned off, they're going to reduce their ability to help you see where you're going and reduce the ability of other vehicles to see your vehicle. So the next time you get gas, or frankly, the next time you pull into your car for the night, make sure you wipe off your headlights and your taillights. Get that road salt off of it, and you'll find yourself to be a lot safer on the roadway. Take care and stay warm.
Big thank you to Mike for his continued support of the show. Let's get to our first question here from a longtime subscriber. The screen name is TUAL08. 3-part question here, or 2-part question, excuse me. I'm seeing 3 sentences. 2 questions. What do you think is the cause of the inconsistent play Is it the roster? You can include injuries to some extent, or is it coaching? Talking about the men's team here. The cause of the inconsistent play. Kyle, I'll throw this one over to you first.
One, I mean, I just don't think they're a good enough team to be like, okay, they're definitely just gonna go out there and go 29-6. Like, I think
Yeah.
for the men's team, there's a couple things at play. One of which is that whether it's due to injury or people leaving the team or people redshirting, whatever it might be, they're essentially running like a 7-man rotation right now, a 7 or 8 man rotation. So like those things lend itself to like a shorter bench. I mean, the fact that they recruited as well as they did is what's keeping them afloat, and that they're 14-8, and that they were able to weather some of those losses. But like, there's going to be games that, yeah, would it have been better if Jameel Brown was available? Would it have been better if Elijah Gray didn't just come back against ECU? Would it, like if Lynn Greer had been the player he was the last 2 years at St. Joe's and was able to come off the bench and do those things? Yeah, that would help. So like, I think that's definitely a factor. The fact that they're 14-8, in spite of that, I think is a testament to that this was a deep roster in the beginning, and now you're starting to see like, okay, maybe it's back down to like just a regular roster, and yeah, they have a shorter bench.
Yeah, I don't know that I could say it any better.
No.
Any better than that. Pretty much nailed it. Temple 22 is the next screen name or the question here. And the ever-changing landscape of college sports, what is Temple's best path forward in basketball? It feels like it'll be hard to get the hired gun like Jamal Mashburn every year. It feels like they need to develop an identity and then recruit accordingly. How do you guys see it? Yes, they need to develop an identity and then recruit accordingly. I think they have done that. I mean, you can. I think based off the people I've talked to, I think Cam Miles is going to be more ready to contribute next year than Cam Wallace. Not that Cam Wallace hasn't had a good season at Westtown, but I think Adam Fisher needs to know what he's getting in terms of like revenue share and what they are going to be able to do recruiting wise. Again, that does not absolve Adam Fisher and his staff of coaching. I think they've done a good job for the most part. To go back to TUL08's question, I'm not saying any of the coaches are infallible here, but yeah, if you don't have to speak to what Kyle said, you were counting on Lynn Greer, Jameel Brown. You didn't get them this year. We'll see if Jameel Brown is back next year after taking what's likely going to be a medical red shirt. Sure, I think developing identity and recruiting accordingly, of course, because I think you want to be able to say, yes, the portal is going to be a thing every year. But just like Casey Keeler talks about in a different sport, we still want to develop a culture here. We still want to make sure that guys stick around. In their heart of hearts, I'm sure they want to make sure that Quante Berry sticks around. Will he? We'll see. But I think if I'm Adam Fisher, I want to know what revenue share looks like. Are they bringing the tough fund in house? Like, what am I going to be working with? I know there's more legislation to come, but I think some of this is to be determined. If I don't know, I could put it any better than that.
Yeah, I think revenue share. Look, if are they ever going to win a bidding war against Kentucky or Michigan or USC?
No.
Like, no, they're gonna lose those if it comes down truly to money. I think their pitch has to be to program guys that developed. Let's use Zion Stanford as an example. A guy who's developing, a guy who's probably going to take another jump into his junior year. I think having rev share, assuming Temple, commits to it the way that Tim Pernetti wants all AAC teams to commit to it, gives you the opportunity to keep a player like that, where you can keep kind of those program guys that end up being 3-4 year guys, and you grow them and you build them, and you have something resembling a roster progression more so than you might have had like 2 years ago when everything was just NIL and the tough fund just simply could not compete with keeping some players. I think Jamal Mashburn helps with recruiting hired guns. I think the question was, you can't always rely on a hired gun. Sure, but you now have film to be like, look what we did with this guy. This guy's second in the nation in scoring. We give him pretty much free reign to do whatever he wants on offense. Like, you could come in and plug that in. Recruiting's still part of it. Developing still part of it. Coaching's still a huge part of it. Basketball more so than football. I think a lot of times you could get the talent level. The talent discrepancy is not so huge in between teams that like the sport itself allows for upsets more. So it's overwhelmingly simple to boil it down to this, but I think it boils down to recruitment, development, and coaching, just like it always has.
These next two mailbag questions here come from your colleagues at the Temple News, your friends Evelyn and Nurbanu. Johnny, you want to read Evelyn's question here, and Jay will let you read Nurbanu's question?
Sure. I will gladly read Evelyn's question on Twitter. Hey, boys. So excited for this week's pod. How do you see Trujillo performing ahead of the combine? And if there's time, score predictions for Birds Chiefs game.
Evelyn, there's always time. We have
There's always time
for you. How do you see Maddux Trujillo performing ahead of the combine? So yeah, he got invited to, I guess, like the kicking
part
portion of it. Yeah, I'm excited for him because I think he's got a strong enough leg. I think not that they can simulate what a real NFL game is going to be like, but hopefully he gets. I have no idea if Maddux Trujillo is going to get drafted. Obviously, if he does well in this combine coming up, awesome. I think what remains to be seen is how he's going to handle pressure situations in NFL games if he gets that far. But I don't know. I'm excited for him. I mean, he seems to have a pretty loose, and in a good way, a loose approach to to kicking. Excuse me. Rich Berg and I were talking about this earlier today when we were, before we talked to Casey Keeler, and here's a guy who wanted to come in and just wanted to have the opportunity to kick off, to handle kickoffs, and then maybe compete for the job. Kyle, I think, said last week, did any of us really know he was going to be this good this year? He had a solid resume at Austin Peay, but I would have no reason to think he's not going to perform well unless he gets out to Indianapolis and suddenly gets like overwhelmed by the moment. I haven't seen anything that would indicate that he would, but I don't know.
I think. I mean, it could. I think it's like you said. It's fun that he got invited. It's kind of hard to know like if he'll get drafted. I think he 100%. Like it's undeniable that he has the leg to show off at a combine where you're not really simulating a full game experience, where you can just show off your kicking power and distance. Like I think that'll 100% catch scouts' eyes. I mean that the 164-yard kick he had was insane. And I think like from what Stan had and the team had said last year, like he'd made it from 70 in practice at one point last year or something.
Yeah, the type of stuff that Brandon McManus used to do.
I think like that stuff's undeniable to like, and then I think he'll be able to show that off there, which I think will catch people's eye.
Yeah.
Other than it being a good story, I don't know how much it really matters. Like, I think that position is kind of like your game film matters so much more than what you're gonna be able to do in combine or practice. To Johnny's point, I mean, John, I think you and I can both think of kickers that came to Temple as All-Americans who, once the lights shined on, could not kick an extra point.
Oh boy, who was the kid from?
I wasn't gonna call him out by name. Jim Cooper Jr. was
from Mainland Regional High School. Yeah,
comes out of Temple, literally could not make extra points once the lights came on. So it was just like
that first game on the road against Notre Dame. I do remember. I have a super quick story. I remember he came to a camp, and I was standing next to Brandon McManus. He was like, "Yeah, I can't really like necessarily work with this kid at the camp, but I can watch him." And the coaches have asked me to watch him and see what I think. And I remember Jim Cooper kicking, and before he started kicking, Brandon said, he's like, "I know this is going to sound simple, but like wait till you hear his foot hit the ball, and it's going to sound like an NFL kicker." And it did. And he looked really, really good, and it just did not work out for him.
Like to that point with Maddux, I think the biggest calling card for him is that film where I've hit the 64-yarder in games. I've hit big kicks in games.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
At the very least, it keeps you on the NFL's radar.
Yeah. Jay, want to read the question here from someone you know?
Yeah.
Wait, we didn't do Birds predictions, right?
Yeah, we didn't do the
we
first
didn't.
prediction.
Oh, Evelyn, I'm so
skip
sorry.
right-
I'm so
skip right
sorry.
over that. You
Yes.
said there was time.
Super Bowl predictions. Yes, you're right, Evelyn. I'm sorry. Sorry. And you're right, Johnny. I
Thank
know you needed to hear that. Yeah. All right. Super Bowl predictions. We have time. Score predictions for the Birds Chiefs game. Why don't we get the predictions out of the way from you guys who don't give a damn about this game, Colin and Ryan?
And those that don't know ball.
Correct.
Ooh. Are you're gonna hate predict, aren't you? We're
I'm
gonna
not
get
gonna
some
hate-
spite predictions here.
I'm not gonna hate predicts. I was gonna predict the Chiefs
Oh.
to win. I don't have a pull on either side. I'm gonna be wearing an Eagles jersey on game day, rooting
Take
for
that
the
thing off.
Eagles.
Do not wear it.
Yeah.
But I think
Who's
feels like-
making you wear an Eagles jersey?
no one's making me. I'm choosing to wear.
Oh,
one.
okay, it's nice.
But it feels like
Very sweet.
the Chiefs are kind of inevitable. It really has that feeling, and you give this coaching staff at Kansas City 2 weeks to prepare, and they're gonna have probably a better game plan than most other teams will, and it just feels like they're inevitable. And I think I'm gonna say like 31-27, 31-28. I mean, my score prediction: Chiefs win.
I'm obligated to say the Eagles. My mom listens to this.
Say whatever you want.
If my mom hear me say the Chiefs, she might like hurt me next time I see her. But even then, I think the Eagles win this game. Even though they lost 2 years ago, this is a way better team than it was 2 years ago. I think even if the stats don't show, I think Jalen Hurts is is better. Do I think he's gonna have to play a little bit better than he did against the Rams? Yeah, but I think they win this game. I know what you kind of say, Colin, about the Chiefs being inevitable, but I don't think there's any way that the clock hits zero in that game in New Orleans and the Eagles are not Super Bowl champions. I see it. I see it.
Ryan playing the
Back
hits.
Ryan knows ball.
Yeah. Johnny, you want to go next?
See, I know a lot of people are predicting like a high scoring game, but I think compared to the last time these two teams met, both of these defenses are miles better than what they were. I mean, James Bradbury was cornerback for the Eagles 2 years
He
ago.
played good that year.
He played good.
Again, I'm not saying
That's revisionist history. He had a very good year that year.
again, I think he had a good year that year. I'm just saying James Bradbury
He's
was
not going to come off the roster and play on Sunday.
If that happens, I'm predicting a 47 to like 15.
Right. I'm just kidding.
Okay. I think it'll be more low scoring than people think. I mean, it's not going to be like a 17 to 14 game, but I mean, I don't think any team gets over 30. I'd say fan in me and just logically, like I can't predict the Chiefs to three-peat. I think I will die if that happens. So I'm going to say 28-24 Eagles.
Jay, and then we'll go to Kyle.
That's funny because that was my exact prediction that I was going to do. So we're on the same wavelength, Johnny. But
There we go.
Colin, to your point, Thanos said he was inevitable, and he got beat by the Avengers. Go Birds.
Fair.
Kyle.
I'm going to echo what a lot of people have said. This is a better Eagles team than it was 2 years ago. It's a worse Chiefs team than it was 2 years ago. The defense is good. Offensively, they are a worse team than they were 2 years ago. I think that the Eagles are already past that kind of moment of like, okay, the week in between, how do you deal with it? Because they've already all dealt with it. I think you can tell Jalen Hurts is more locked in than he was 2 years ago, even though he had a good game 2 years ago. I said this exact same thing that I said 2 years ago, and it came back to bite me, but I'm going to say it again. I'm sick and tired of pretending the Eagles aren't the best team in football. They are. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. I think Jalen Hurts is going to step up and be able to do this. I think it is low scoring, but not that close. I'm going to say 27-17 Eagles.
Interesting.
Think about all the things 2 years ago that had to go wrong for the Eagles to lose.
No,
Jalen
I
Hurts had
agree.
a bad fumble. The turf was horrible. You had a phantom pass interference call against James Bradbury. You like the amount of crap that had to go wrong, and they still should have won that game. I don't think goes wrong this time. I think the Eagles win.
Yeah. I am teetering back and forth between either a 28-20 Eagles win or a 31-28 Eagles win, where the Eagles do get the ball last and Jake the Snake Elliott gets a moment of redemption.
So you do think that this game will come down to who gets the ball last, or
I go back and forth. There's part of what Kyle just said that speaks to me where I'm like, there's the part of me that wants to believe like this won't be a super close game at the end. When you think of the Chiefs, it's interesting. Like, yes, 2 years ago, their offense was more explosive. I actually think this year they have a little bit more speed. It kind of makes me upset that they lost to that receiving core a couple years ago. Now, Xavier Worthy is young, a little rough around the edges, but he's fast. Kareem Hunt's been running the ball really well, considering they took him off the street. I know he hadn't been out of the game for like years, but when Isaiah Pacheco went down, he's run the ball really well in the playoffs, but they've got issues at tackle. They've got issues on the left side of the line. I do think the Eagles should win, but we'll see. But I kind of go back and forth between those two scores, but both ending in an Eagles win. And
if they lose to a team in 2024 that is playing Juju Smith-Schuster 45 snaps a game, I am going to lose my mind. They are a better team. They have the best roster in football. It needs to finally happen.
What are you doing for the game?
Sitting alone and silent. I hate Super Bowl parties.
I do too.
Like it's fine if your team's not in it. Okay, whatever. If your team's in the Super Bowl, shouldn't go to a Super Bowl party.
I agree.
Yeah. I'm watching. My wife and mother-in-law are going to be at the shore. I'm watching back in Howardtown. My mom's going to come over. 2 years ago, I actually said, I think I might have said this to my mom. I might have shared this story, and I think Javon, it might have been on the scoop, where he's like, if I said that to my mom, she'd put me on the floor. At one point, whatever point in the game where I think the Eagles needed a touchdown, they went down and got a field goal. And I said, that's it. Game's over. And my mom was like, well, you don't know yet. You just got to be happy that they were here. I turned around to her. I was like, if you keep this stuff up, you can go drive back to Downingtown right now. And Chelsea looked at me like, that is your mother. And like 5 minutes later, I go back over. I'm like, I'm sorry.
I don't know what came over me.
Yeah. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm watching just with my mom. But yeah, I mean, if the Patriots were in the Super Bowl or if the Broncos were in the Super Bowl, would you guys want to watch in a big party? No, you got to be around. Like, you just got to be able to focus on TV, right?
2018, when the Eagles and the Patriots were both in the Super Bowl, me and my mother did not talk. My mom's a big Eagles fan. I'm a big Patriots. Like, we did not talk from Tuesday to I think the next Wednesday. Did not walk during the game when I was like, so like we can't, like we couldn't
8
do it.
days?
Yeah, like
before,
we
during,
said,
and after the
we
game?
would say good morning, good night, no conversation. Because if it was like a conversation, I would talk trash, she would talk trash. It wasn't gonna be a good thing. We watched at a Super Bowl party, couldn't do it. Mom got annoyed. She ended up listening to the rest of the game in her car so she could listen to Meryl Reese do it. I was watching the game outside with some of my friends because like everyone's talking inside. I couldn't do it.
You were listening to the game?
My mom was. She was like,
Oh,
she
okay.
she gets too nervous and she was like, I can't be around all these people that aren't Eagles fans watching the game. So I'm gonna go into my car and listen to Meryl Reese call it. So she listened to the entire fourth quarter in her GMC in the GMC terrain in the parking lot.
I can respect
amazing.
it. I can respect it. Listen to Mel Reese.
I thought it was so real, but yeah, no, we could not. I had to be when she was inside. I had to be outside. When she was outside, I had to be inside. There was no interaction.
Good Lord. Kyle, we can cut this if you don't want me to. Do you not want me to mention Haley on the podcast, or can we mention?
Oh, I don't care. I just have to go get her because Meg's picking up Jordan. Can you say hi, sweetie? No? Okay.
Haley. Hi, sweetie.
Can you look at him? You gotta look at the camera, sweetie. Oh. No.
Haley, who's going to win on Sunday?
Haley, what do we say about the Eagles? What do we say about the Eagles? We say go Birds? Do we say go Birds? We don't
No.
say go Birds. I'm
You'd be
changing my
bashful.
prediction after Haley's feedback.
This is her first scoop appearance. This is a big deal.
Yeah. Normally Haley's an upstairs girl, but now she's come down into the mines with me.
Into the mines. Jay, read Nirvana's question.
Yeah, she said, hi guys, big fan. I wear your merch hat occasionally. My question is, what's everyone's plans for Valentine's Day?
Jay, why don't you start? Since Nirvana asked you, why don't you tell us who Nirvana is?
Yeah, Nirvana was my girlfriend, and I am making dinner for her on Saturday since we're all going out with friends on Friday. So yeah,
What's on the menu? What are you making?
Chicken Alfredo. I'm still figuring out the rest of my menu. She was nervous. I had to convince her. She didn't trust me after the TTN mac and cheese, but I really worked hard to convince her.
I was gonna ask if you were gonna make mac and cheese.
She doesn't like mac and cheese.
Oh.
Wait, was it last year you guys screwed up the mac and cheese, or this year?
that was
Yeah.
Okay, so this year everything was fine, right? Johnny, what are you doing Valentine's Day?
going out with some friends, going to dinner.
There you go.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Okay.
Declan will be there, so we will get to hang out with Declan, the person that you think is dead.
I didn't say I was in a meeting with Declan yesterday. He's moving and grooving as an academic.
Well, I'm saying
advisor, so-
anytime you, I think this is the first week you haven't said Declan is no longer with us.
It's present tense, just he's no longer with us on the scoop.
Okay,
but
but you
he's
see
very
how-
much
you see
a
how
member
that
of this.
sounds.
He is very
Yeah,
much
that sounds.
fucking one.
It has
Every day
affected
that
like whenever I
passes,
talk to her.
Declan gets closer and closer to a tweed jacket. Like he's just gonna go full academic.
He's gonna start smoking a pipe. Tweed
Quote.
jacket with elbow pads. There's no way he's not. If he's wearing a tweed jacket, it has elbow pads.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Kyle, are you and Meg doing anything special for Valentine's Day?
I am on call next weekend, so I'm not doing it that weekend. I talked about this. I'm terrible at gifts, so we're just going to Costa Rica like the following weekend.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah, I remember that a couple weeks ago. You brought that up.
But no, nothing in particular. I'm sure maybe Meg will do something nice for me. Maybe I don't want to say we're not doing anything because maybe Meg has something up her sleeve.
Guys, Valentine's Day plans? Colin, Ryan?
I'm getting dinner with my girlfriend Friday night, and that's about it.
Where you going?
It's a place called, I think it's like Franklin's Social Bar and Restaurant. I think it's in Old City.
Okay.
I don't know. She found it. I just booked the place.
Nice.
So that's all our plans.
Ryan?
I'm getting dinner on Tuesday, like just because it was really bad circumstances, like not bad circumstances, but I'm going down to Maryland this weekend, and Sienna was supposed to go to Montana this weekend to go see her best friend play basketball. It was their senior night. Then she was not going to Montana anymore, so she's still here, and I was going down to Maryland. But
Awkward.
but that just it happened happened last second. But so but we had already made plans for doing something like later the week.
We'll talk about that more in the pod next week.
See how the
Stay tuned.
fallout is after all that.
I don't think Chell and I think we're just gonna like make dinner at home. It's on a Friday. We have our 13th annual Claire Smith Center and Klein College of Media and Communication Sports Media Summit next Friday, just in case anybody is interested in going. Got an Eagles panel in the morning. Dave Spadero, Braylon Moore, Fran Duffy, Bo Wolf from PHLY, EJ Smith, and then a lot of other stuff later on in the day. Kevin Kincaid from Crossing Broad is coming in, so it should be a really fun day. I'm probably gonna be tired by the end of the day. Haley is back and joining us again on the scoop. But yeah, I don't think Chell and I have anything super exciting. Haley, what are you and Daddy doing on Valentine's Day?
Did you give me a card? No. You didn't give me a card?
No.
Can you say go birds? What are you wearing? Are you wearing a doctor shirt?
No.
What is it
Haley,
then?
Haley, where's Riggs?
Soccer shirt.
It is a soccer shirt. You're right. Stupid daddy. My go-to if a kid's ever angry at you is you just convince them that you are a moron. Like, Haley, is your shirt green?
No. On it.
Oh, stupid daddy. My kids think I am just incompetent. I don't understand basic things, but it gets them to talk to me.
Haley, give Riggs a hug for us. And she left.
Yeah, you want that dog? You can have him.
I love Riggs.
I'll ship Riggs out tomorrow.
Chell would love that. Another dog. Okay, now 2 more questions here, not pertaining to the Super Bowl or Valentine's Day. The first one comes from Twitter, Jack Orlando. What group of 5 schools do you think are the best football opponents to have on Temple's schedule? I would say Delaware, UConn, and UMass. Don't particularly care for any AAC besides the academies. Well, they're opening against or at UMass this coming season, so they've got them on the schedule. Obviously, the Delaware game would be cool. I don't know. I mean,
This is outside of the conference. This is an out of
yeah,
conference.
I guess so. I mean, sure. I think there are some other fun matchups. What other group of 5 schools would you want to see on the non-conference schedule?
I don't even know. I mean, I think the
I mean,
one
Boise.
that could be fun. I think
Anybody else?
I think the main ones were kind of already named that I would like to see. Maybe
Yeah,
Cleveland,
UConn.
UConn.
I
Delaware could be fun.
Never hated a
Both
trip
are
to
cool.
never hated a trip to East Hartford. All right, final question here. Temple Tough from Twitter. What are some positions that the staff will add to in the spring? Offensive line, maybe. They're already 16 on the roster, though. Anyone else stick out? I think, well, they brought in Anthony Chickett from Robert Morris, an FCS quarterback. We'll see how things go in the spring. We'll have more, again, in parts 2 and part 3 of my conversation with Casey Keeler. You'll hear him talk about the whole dynamic of, like, does Tyler Walker come in and do they try to fit everything to what he's done at Montana State? I don't want to spoil that, but I think Anthony Chickett can come in and compete. I look, if they went out and tried to recruit another quarterback, at Michigan, didn't get him. So I think that they'll always look to try to add depth at quarterback, offensive line. It's kind of hard to say, but it's a great question. But Casey and I, again, you'll hear this in either part 2 or part 3. Spring ball has almost become like an audition now, where it's in the past, prior to the portal, prior to NIL, spring ball was like you develop the current roster you have. There's install before you really get to preseason camp. Not that they won't do that, but now it's really kind of like an audition. And like the post spring ball portal window is going to be really interesting. So I think you could see them address a lot of different positions. You could see them address offensive line. You could see them address quarterback. You could see them add another running back. Once this staff really kind of like really, really gets into this roster and looks at it and sees what they have and what they don't have, I don't know that there's any position that they wouldn't try to add to. I don't think there's any single position on the roster where right now where they're sitting there saying like, yeah, we're good. I think they're just, again, like a guy like Casey Keeler, who has won at a few different levels, is smart enough to know he's just not going to sit there with his arms folded and say, we're good at this position. They're looking to replace a kicker. I mean, even a punter, like, does Dante Atten work? I mean, do they still want to, like, does this special teams coaching staff want Dante Atten to still be a rugby style punter, or do they want him to do that? I don't know that there's any position that they wouldn't try to add to in, post spring Kyle, what are your thoughts on this one? I was, again, I don't know that there's any position that Casey Keeler and the staff are looking at where they're just like, yeah, we're good here. I think sure they could add depth at quarterback and the O-line, but any position group that sticks out to you where you could say, even if they just see a perfect spring, best spring they could hope for, I still think they're going to try to add here.
The one area that I think just number wise, that if everything breaks well and people continue to develop and the offense that they're going to run might not need that much improvement, assuming people don't leave, is wide receivers. Like I think there's just so number wise, there's so many people. You have some guys that have been successful in the past, Antonio Jones, Josiah Holloway kind of actually started to pop a little bit towards the end of that season. You have some freshmen that they really like, or at least the previous staff really liked, in Jamar Taylor and Tyler Stewart. Like if all those guys stay, then I think they'll probably just add a couple wideouts to that, or one or two. I don't think that's a thing they necessarily massively want to do, but I think in general, they're not going to turn people away if there's an improvement to the roster. So I think that's the position that sticks out the most to me.
All right, so next week we'll have more hoops, more answers to your mailbag questions. Again, if you have not yet subscribed to owlscoop.com, as Declan used to say, what are you doing? Parts 2 and Part 3 of my interview with Casey Keeler will be available only to subscribers. A lot of cool stuff there. Really enjoyed my conversation with Temple head coach Casey Keeler earlier today. So I hope you guys will enjoy that content the rest of the week. Hope you guys have a great week. If you're an Eagles fan, go Birds. We'll talk to you next week.